Today, we're going to talk about one of the first, and I mean truly deep computer games ever made. It was this huge sci-fi adventure that had people hooked all over the country. But here's the wild part. It was built entirely out of text, on a machine that literally couldn't draw a single picture. I mean, really think about that. How do you create a whole universe when you don't have graphics? In a time way before pixels and polygons, how could one person possibly build a galaxy, let you command a starship, and create these thrilling tactical battles? Well, let's get into it. So, to really get this, we've got to rewind the clock a bit, back to the late 1960s. This was this amazing time when these giant university mainframe computers were suddenly becoming way more accessible, and it created this perfect little playground for a brand new kind of hobbyist. It really all kicked off because of two huge things. First, back in '64, this guy at Dartmouth, John Kemeny, created BASIC, a programming language that was specifically designed to be super easy to learn. Then, you had these time-sharing systems that let a bunch of students use the same huge computer all at once. The result? A total explosion of creativity. And what were all these students making? You guessed it, games. By 1968, games made up more than a quarter of all the software at Dartmouth. And this wasn't seen as some big waste of time either. In fact, John Kemeny himself was all for it. He thought making games was an awesome way for students to get comfortable with these newfangled computer things. So into this exciting new world walks our hero, a high school kid with this massive ambition to build a universe. But he was facing a technical problem that seemed pretty much impossible to solve. Meet Mike Mayfield. He was completely obsessed with computers, but, his high school didn't have one. So he came up with this really clever, kind of sneaky workaround. He just walked into the computer lab at the nearby University of California, Irvine, and pretended he was a student who just hadn't gotten his password yet. And it worked. He was in. But he hit a wall almost immediately. See, in one room, he saw students playing the legendary game Space War on a computer hooked up to a real video monitor. It was incredible. But the machine he could get on was a Sigma 7, and its only output was a teletype. That's basically a super loud, slow typewriter that just printed everything on paper. So he had this dream of graphics, but the reality was just text. So how in the world did he get around that? I mean, he couldn't create graphics, period. So he had to invent a whole new way to even visualize a universe, using the only tool he had, characters on a page. And his big inspiration, the TV show Star Trek. Mayfield's solution was just genius. He basically pioneered what we now call ASCII-based graphics. He used really simple characters like an asterisk for a star, a K for a Klingon ship, an E for the Enterprise to create a map. It was just a grid of text, right? But for the first time in a game like this, it gave you a real sense of space, of position, of moving through a galaxy. And the game itself? It was unbelievably deep for its time. This was way more than a simple shooter. It was an expedition. You were piloting the Enterprise, scanning for enemies, and managing your ship's power. It felt like you were actually commanding a starship, forcing you to think, to plan, and to save your resources for a fight. The depth really came from this revolutionary gameplay loop. You see, you weren't just reacting to things on a screen. You were constantly making strategic decisions. Which sector do I warp to next? Do I have enough juice to raise shields and fire my phasers? Should I risk taking a long-range shot? This kind of strategy it wasn't something you found in the simple arcade games of that time. And that really gets to the heart of it. Yeah, the programming was tough, for sure. But Mayfield's real genius was in game design. He built an entire universe from scratch, with its own rules, its own goals, its own story, all while being stuck with the most basic output imaginable. Now, here's the thing. Mayfield never actually intended to share this thing. He just coded it for himself and his friends, and he kept the only copy on a single reel of paper tape. But a game this good, it couldn't stay a secret forever. The way this game got out into the world is just a fantastic story. After Mayfield moved it to an HP computer in '72, somebody found it. And from there, it just spread like wildfire. HP actually added it to their official software catalog in 1973, and pretty soon, different versions were being played and tweaked and expanded on mainframes all over the country, eventually becoming the legendary Super Star Trek. Because of all that depth and its massive influence, a lot of people argue that Mayfield's Star Trek was, for all intents and purposes, the first real computer game. Not just a cool tech demo or a little novelty, but a true piece of entertainment.
So what does real even mean here? Well, it means the game had a big, clear goal, go wipe out all the Klingons, but it gave you the freedom to figure out how to do it. It was complex, you had to actually spend time learning its systems, and it was super replayable because the galaxy was randomly generated every time you started a new game. It gave players agency, a sense of control that no simple game had really done before.
At the end of the day, the game was a huge success because it did two things perfectly. First, it totally captured the fantasy of its inspiration, that feeling of exploration and adventure from the Star Trek TV show. And second, it took the legacy of Space War and pushed it forward, proving that a computer game could be a deep, strategic, world-building experience even without a single graphic to its name.
Mike Mayfield's story is just this powerful reminder that, so often, creativity doesn't just happen despite limitations. It happens because of them. He didn't have graphics, so he invented a whole new visual language. And it just makes you wonder, what are the limitations we have today, and what incredible, world-changing ideas are being born from them right now?